No! God, please, no! 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 God!
Parte Del Piero, rete Del Piero!
Pallone con i contadini per Nedved,
Pirlo, la conclusione in rete! Andrea Pirlo, un gol pazzesco! Del Piero, gol! Alex Del Piero! Palla di Pogacar, Pogba, rete! Un gol incredibile! Pogba fa esplodere lo Juventus Stadium!
Ciao tifosi bianconeri. Welcome to episode 286 of the Turin Giants podcast. I'm your host for this episode, Kevin. You may hear some squealing potentially in the background because I'm joined by my 3-month-old son who's also co-hosting here. So please forgive that. But more importantly, I'm joined here by our dynamic duo, Frederic, Zach. I'm not even going to ask how you are. Audience, folks listening to us, I can only imagine you're here because you want to share in the pain of what you observed watching Juve crash out the Coppa Italia in a fashion I didn't quite think was possible. Even given the pains and struggles of this team and what we've witnessed this season, that I'm struggling to find the right words for it. So maybe you guys can help me out.
I'll help you out because at the end of the last episode, I was talking to Patrick and I was just saying, what word would you describe it if we did crash out against an injury ravaged, out of form Empoli team? And I've had a few days since that episode to reflect on it, and it's particularly present now, seeing as we lost. And I think catastrophic is maybe the best my vocabulary can do, because it is just unacceptable to see this Juventus team play the way they did and ultimately fall in defeat to a largely B-sided team that has been playing horrible football for 2 months. I'm just struggling to put it into words.
I have to concur and agree. I'm always the worst scenario type guy, but in the last few days, I could never imagine Juve losing this game, especially not the way they lost. So I'm a bit down and out at this point. I'm always very passionate about Juve, and I know a lot of people mostly don't agree with my opinions or how I see things. But today has been a real blow to me. I had a partial setback against PSV last week, but I kind of expect that to happen. And that in itself is a very sad fact that you expect these things to happen. And then tonight, hardly a week after that loss, we suffer a humiliating defeat against one of the worst Serie A sides I've ever seen play in my 41 years of age. So yeah, it's a tough blow for me mentally, I'm not gonna lie.
So before we thank you guys for sharing the opening perspectives here. So before we continue, thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. You know, you can follow us on Instagram at Turin Giants, on Twitter /X at Turin Giants, and at Juve Podcast. We're really trying to boost our kind of YouTube presence. So please follow us at Turin Giants on YouTube. This recording will be uploaded to YouTube, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you're watching this on or listening on Spotify, you can also catch out the video as well. 5-star ratings mean the world to us. If you like and subscribe on YouTube, that would be amazing as well. So, Zach, normally we start with you.
No, I have something
Normally
to add
we
to housekeeping, actually.
okay,
Yeah,
please,
if Farhad
please.
messaged me, because we weren't sure if Baby would allow you to join us today, but he did say that for all of our listeners, if anybody enjoys making new style reels or new style content, or would be interested in making new style content for Turn Giants related to Juventus, is comfortable on camera, has the necessary hardware, we're looking to create some really cool, new, fun Instagram content. For those who do follow us at Turn Giants, we make a full spectrum of fun, historical, informative content. And so if you're really interested to get involved in that, message our Turn Giants Instagram page, and Farhad will get back to you on that. So I'm sorry, Kevin, but that rounds out our housekeeping.
No, awesome. Absolutely. I think that would be a great opportunity for anybody who has those talents and wanting to put it to work for Juve. Zach, we normally start with you giving some perspective on kind of starting lineup, some interesting comments on the tactics, but all right, little guy, I think we kind of have to throw that out the window and just dive into just what does this result kind of mean to you? Like what's your takeaway just from what we just experienced?
It's atrocious, and not. And I don't want to make this, and as much as I will mention Empoli, I don't want to make this about Empoli per se, because based on how we played, I think they were largely, they deserved the victory today. So I don't want this to take away from a very historic moment for them. But there are certain level of expectations with Juventus. People who listen regularly might say, well, Zach, you've made excuses throughout all these draws with the mind that we're building towards something. Well, now that we're at the business end of the season, that building towards something has to materialize in something, or you're building towards nothing. We crash out of the Champions League, so that's out. And now we crash out of the Coppa in the quarterfinals. It's just making a lot of the efforts of this season ring hollow. And kind of what I heard in Frederic's voice is, it's like, you want to be excited about things as a fan. You can accept losing when you lose to a better team, putting everything out there. But that is not what happened today, and this was not what happened against PSV, and it's really tough to swallow. You know,
Was there a moment that you ever thought that things would be turned around in this match?
let me give some perspective, to what I just said. Is, Kevin, you were messaging the group during the game, and you said, I wonder what the value is of the Empoli squad. Okay. And so now I'm going to put you guys on the spot, because I pulled it up. Is Empoli, the whole squad, more than 100 million euro or less than 100 million euro?
Less, way
Less.
It's less. And, based on transfer market, take that for what you will. Dusan plus Colomwani, or Dusan plus Coop. I mean, pick any two of those quote unquote stars of our team. 2 players greater in value than the entire Empoli team. It's just miserable. I mean, to talk about it, Kevin, was there a moment we thought we'd turn it on? Yeah, when Kefram scored that beautiful goal, and I think you have to call it what it is. It was a beautiful goal. It really showed you what he can do on the ball. You could see the team really wake up. But even if we had gone to win that game, I mean, the goal, when was that? Based on my notes, 66th minute. I mean, that's 2/3 of a game that showed a sloppy, complacent, uncomposed team that was out there, not giving Empoli and not giving the occasion its due attention and respect. And that's unacceptable. It's just unacceptable.
I think if I look at the first half, I think to your point, everything about the Empoli squad, and we don't want to make it about them, but it is a fact that they are one of the most struggling sides in Serie A, with 9 missing players, and they benched Gyasi, who's one of their better players, because they gave up. They thought that they were just going to come in here, lose, and they would focus on Serie A. So that's what we're playing against. We have 70% possession to end the first half, 0 shots on target, and we could or should have been down 2 or 3-0.
Yeah.
If that doesn't illustrate that we do not know how to bring this team together and play as a unit and play as a team and fight for the shirt in a knockout game at home, when your path to the Coppa Italia final is pretty clean, relatively speaking. I want to cry like this guy.
It's mind-boggling, and also the fact that our head coach, and you have to give him leeway to some extent, because even though Zach and I this season were pretty much on opposite ends, afterwards with a cooler head on my shoulders, I tend to agree with him and see his points that he particularly made, and they were fine. But at this point, like what is it, March already, almost? He doesn't seem to be able to put a decent starting lineup together. He botches the starting lineup every single goddamn time. And I'm so sick of a coach that sees his players on a daily basis, who is more adapted to assess their physical strength, to their mental strength, their form, whatever, and still be able to do these things. It makes you almost wonder, like, is he doing this on purpose? And those are the things that have cost us points in the past. But now you have a full-blown Copa game, which you just need to win. And he pulls this shit again. And he stands there, and I know it's a lot media based and whatever, but he stands there with his hands in his pockets. He doesn't seem to agitate the squad. He doesn't seem to. It's like it's a team of 11 players that we found on the side of the road saying, hey, we have a game coming up and we're short a few players. Want to come and join? That's the feeling I get when I see this side playing. And my heart bleeds. I mean, how can you excuse these performances, let alone just a loss? Because a loss, I'll take a loss. I've taken lots of losses with Juventus over the years. But the losses that we've experienced this season are so blatant and so infuriating. And I said this before, but this is really, I'm really at the point where I can't see any light at the end of the tunnel.
To me, I think we could have put our entire roster into a hat, pulled out 11 names, thrown them on the pitch, and we should have won. I think it's less team selection today, though. We should get into that, Frederic, because I like the tactics, but I think it's more so the mindset. And I've said it before on this podcast several times when we've come out flat at the beginning of games, at the start of second halves, that I definitely attribute that more to the coach preparing the team mentally, telling them a clear picture of how we are going to go play this game and what is our pathway to victory, and ensuring that they're mentally prepared and amped and all that stuff. I bet that greater than 50% on the coach, right? The rest being on the leadership and the player's own character and drive. And the regularity with which we've seen this team start flat or play flat. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating. I think Mozza tried to maybe stem the tide. He is as early as subs ever, right? 54th minute, right? He clearly was not happy with what he was seeing, but I think a lot of it has to come to him. It's like after that abysmal first half, where was the fire in that beginning of the second? It was flat. You had to take those subs.
And I agree with you once again, but I think that's even worse than botching your lineup, because
it is. I mean,
tactically you can improve, you can learn, you can adapt, you can adjust, but not being able to put that sort of winning mentality, especially a week after being eliminated from the Champions League with another shambolic performance, and you don't get these players hyped up enough to get on that pitch and press the hell out of a weak Empoli side for maybe 15 minutes, which will allow you to score at least twice if you press them for like 15, 20 minutes and you attack and defend as a whole team. But not even that first spark is something that you can build upon for the rest of the game. And to me, that's also the kind of spark a coach needs to give his players, especially these players, these young players, these players that have no notion of what Juventus means historically. We can go back and forth about quality and technicality and all those things, but it's clear to see that somebody like Kolo Muani, he understands the heritage because he gives his all. He comes in, he works and whatever. But there are a lot of players that, lack that sentiment. And then it's up to you as a coach to prepare them the whole week or the times that you have in practice and in training and get them sharp, get them, so to speak, with knives between their teeth to come out of the tunnel and get a result, get a victory, get a convincing win, get that confidence going, get that ego boost going, get that, the positive juices flowing. And he just fails at that. He fails at the starting point. And that's so frustrating, as you said. That's even to us as fans, you can it's tangible.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
I have a question for you, Frederick. This month we've gone 5 straight wins in the league, but we've been 1-2 in cup competitions. Is this maybe that we're seeing a little of that Conti prioritization from Motta, where because it's hard for me, like, I don't take back anything I said, but it's also hard for me to say that Motta just doesn't have it when we're 5 straight wins in the league, 2 points clear in 4th place, but we've performed really badly in 2 of our last 3 cup games in the same month. Is it maybe, and this is not an excuse, there's no excuse, but is it maybe Motta or the players deprioritizing this, or going in, like I said earlier, maybe with a degree of complacency in these types of in the second leg against PSV and against Empoli?
I think it's a mix of certain factors. I think one of the things that deprioritization that you mentioned is absolutely one of the factors. Although I do feel that they don't do it intentionally. I think it's a feeling that grows throughout training and throughout maybe the lack of results, or maybe the sense of belonging, having that ownership in Champions League, having that surefire feeling like we have to win the Coppa Italia. It has to do a little with confidence as well. But I also feel, and that's my own honest opinion, that the straight wins we had were, I'm not going to say flukes, but all the bad luck we had this season, I think that was the time when we were, I'm not going to say lucky, but we didn't have any unlucky breaks at that point, which allowed us to build upon another result. But if you analyze the games, I mean, our play wasn't overly exciting as well.
Well, overly exciting is different from deserving of victories. We deserve to beat Empoli at the beginning of the month 4-1. We deserve to beat Inter despite their missed chances. I mean, we went out there and we played. They didn't take their chances. We did. We deserve to beat Cagliari last game. Okay. Como game was maybe the one where we stole one, right? That one might have seemed destined to that 1-1 draw, but we won in the end. But I think in general, we played maybe not super polished. We didn't play everybody off the pitch, but I thought we put a good product out this month in those games we won. And even the first game against PSV, but in today and that second leg, that same product was missing. And I don't know if that's an immature coach who doesn't know how to prep a team for a cup competition, or to flip the switch at how these competitions have a different complexion than the league. It's not just like you have a game in 3 days. There's different stakes, there's different pressure, there's different things at play that affect the sort of the the environment and the surroundings of these games. Maybe it's reflective more of his immaturity as a coach, that he's not able to fire these players up and put a game plan together in order to manage through these different complexions. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. But I also think that it's another mental issue as well. It's another mental issue as well, because you go to a league game, or at least when I played, I had the sense of, I'm going to try my best, but if this doesn't work out, I'll have next week. The pressure was a bit lighter, if I could put it like that, because you knew that there were second chances incoming during midweek games or other games. But in a knockout phase, it's like, okay, I have to be there. And then you have to be really confident and be sure of yourself that you can get that performance in to get that win. And this team lacks that. If we have one little setback within a cup game, we start to tremble. We start to do things that are inexplicable. Gold miners today, I mean, we all saw the gift that Kevin created. If you've seen him play, you would have swore he never touched a football in his life. Nico Gonzalez, same thing, couldn't make a pass of 2 meters.
He's a player I've defended and stuff. The last 2 games, he's been horrible, and it's hard to watch. I don't know if he's got the yips or what, but he just is all of a sudden, because everything about his game, his positioning, the runs he makes, you can see the intention. It's all good. He's got that Dusan touch all of a sudden.
He's not executing.
Yeah.
He can't do what he wants to do.
And a guy who's playing like that, as much as I love the hardworking nature that he has and the intelligence, because it's clear to me he's got the intelligence. He's got to sit a few games. You got to take a break, reset, restart, because it's just not working.
But also, I feel also that is a bit of a responsibility of the coach, because, I mean, we don't have world-class players. We have to be honest. We have some fairly good players, some players that need to develop. And I'm all for that. But like I said, there are players that if you see them play today, you thought they'd never touch a ball in their life, meaning that that's a sense of confidence that's missing. And I feel that's up to the coach to boost their confidence and give them that little edge to start performing and start challenging themselves or rendering the most out of what they can do. And that's the thing with Conte, because you mentioned Conte. But he's a coach that's able to squeeze out 110% of a player in terms of mentality, in terms of physicality.
Well, in league play.
Well, we're not doing any better in cup games right now. So, but he has that quality, and that's the quality that Motta's lacking. And I feel with a younger side, with a new side, you need to have that. That's something that's inherent to the coaching job at that point, because you need that confidence boost to start growing. And, failure is a part of that too. And failure is not to be welcomed. But if failure is something that you can build upon and you can improve and grow as a team and individually, then I'm all for that. But that's the thing that we're lacking right now. It's March.
So I like during the PSV match, we post-game, my little guy, we specifically broke apart analyzing the players on the pitch and the coach. I think it's very easy to go again, like to attack Malta here. And he deserves all the criticism coming his way. This team should still be good enough to go out. And Frederic, like you talk about a cup tie, you would think following our exit in the Champions League that we have an opportunity to come up to another knockout game right away. Aren't you running out on the pitch with like your hair on fire with a point to prove and just
poor choice of words. Poor choice of words.
You're talking to 2 bald guys, Kevin.
Yes. For those of you who aren't seeing the video, I am talking to 2 guys with shaven heads. So maybe that wasn't the right descriptor there, but you're coming out with a point to prove. You're coming out to bleed for the shirt in front of your home fans that you deserve to advance, because this is the only opportunity of winning a trophy this season.
Yeah.
It's the only opportunity. So forget Malta and riling up his team in the second half, preparing the team, putting the right players on the pitch. These guys should have it in them. That set of players should have been good enough to win that match.
Like I said, Kevin, I think you could have put our roster in a hat, picked out pieces, threw them on the pitch, whatever came out, and we should have been able to win this match. I don't care. This 11, any combination of 11, start Roberto Costa, we should have been able to win this match with any of our team. And maybe this goes back to Frederic, because I wanted to get back to this. Is you walked us through your frustrations with the starting lineup. I mean, why didn't you jump in? Why don't you explain that a little bit more? What about the starting lineup just spoke to you the wrong way?
It's not just this starting lineup in particular, because once again, I agree with what you said. I mean, we could have picked 11 players out of hand and still would have won. I mean, with two hands tied behind their backs as well. The thing that bothers me most is that his overall squad management is poor, because you keep players on the bench who are performing or who are hungry for a good performance, and you egotistically choose your preferred players like Koopmeiners, like Nico Gonzalez. You let them start over players that, in my opinion, deserve it. This was a perfect game for Kenan to start, because you saw when he came on, we played a different type of football. We were more dangerous. We were more apt. We were more aggressive. We were a bit fast-paced. So he's a player with that quality, but you prefer to keep him on the bench, which to me is a bit mind-boggling. You start with Kolo and Vlahovic together, but you choose to put Kolo on the wing. Why would you do that? He's proven his effectiveness. And that's something that I hate, because I've been a former player myself, and you need that consistency. You need to be able to see or feel when you played a decent game or when you're on fire, so to speak, that you can get out to the pitch and prove it once again. And he totally breaks that basic, that fluctuation point of a team, of a squad. And that's something that baffles me. As he's an ex-player, he should have known better. And some of his choices are very poor, and he keeps on sticking to his own perspective egotistically, and something. Yeah, I'm not gonna say what I feel or what I think or what
No.
words come
I
to
want
mind,
you to,
but
Freddie, pick a player who on that pitch today, just based on their performance, has no room on a Juve pitch.
do you have a minute?
I'm limiting you to one.
The most atrocious player today for me was Nico Gonzalez, along with Coop. I mean, it's a tie. They both lose.
All right, you take Coop, I'll take Nico.
Yeah.
All right, because you go. I mean, we've heard you speak on Coop. You've been watching him. I mean, you've met him in person. You played against him. I think it was a charity match or something,
Yeah,
right?
true.
But you've been you've kind of been following him very closely throughout since throughout the season. What about his play? We'll just stick to today. Was just so atrocious.
Everything, his positioning, his pace, his technicality. He's just not the same player. He completely changed. And like, I don't know him personally, so I can't message him and say, hey, buddy, what's up? Because you're playing shit. But there's something that isn't sitting well. There's something it's really baffling to see the difference in performances last season, this season. And I feel if you're a coach of a certain type of player that you wanted and it costs a lot of money, but you can see that he's not putting in the same performances as he was last year, it's your job to get to the bottom of that. Is it the relationship with the coach? Is it his own physicality that's hindering him because of lack of preparation? Is it a mental issue that's blocking him from just being free? Because He plays like somebody's pointing a gun to his head. He plays with fear in his eyes and his body language and his whole sense of being on a pitch. Like if you zoom in on him, half the time it feels like he's saying with his body language, "Please get me out of here. I don't want to be here." So something is very, very wrong. And the fact that Mota doesn't intervene in any way, shape, or form to get to the bottom of that issue, to me is very concerning. Because not only are you, well, you're hindering a player's career, I feel, but you're also damaging your club financially because you've invested in this player. If I buy a Porsche 911 worth 200K, I have to put gas in it. I have to, get maintenance on it to make sure it runs. I'm not, you can't say, "Oh, I didn't put petrol in it. It isn't running. What the fuck kind of shit car is this?" No, it's my job to make sure that it keeps running, that it's polished, that it's shiny, that it's maintenance. And I think we turned a potential Porsche into a Fiat.
So Nico Gonzalez, and I won't rehash my spiel about him because I stand by it. But Nico Gonzalez and two co-niners have combined for 7 goals and assists, I believe. Let me verify. So yeah, Nico Gonzalez this year, seven goals and assists, and Coop Miners has 5. So they've added to 12 goals and assists for our team. When last year Nico Gonzalez had 19 goal contributions and Coop Miners had 22. I mean, them combined so far this year. I know there's still some season to go, but them combined this year in 30-odd games played each are far behind their contributions on their teams last year. And it's like, I think there's a lot of players who have improved this year, but those two and Douglas Luiz, are premier signings, right? Maybe Nico isn't a premier signing, but we'll lump him in there anyways, have really failed to convert and translate their contribution and their production of years past into this team. And I think with Nico Gonzalez, it's a little bit different from Coop because I at least can see everything that he wants to do. Largely, I think it's right. He's just failed to convert chances up to this point. And in the last 2 games, he's completely lost his touch as well, which has been frustrating to see because you at least see the intent there. Coop Miners for a bunch of the season, I've been kind of wondering, and Frederick is guided us all along. What is he doing? Why is he there? What is he passing? Why is he playing this way? It's hard to even figure it out. And we need to make it right in order to continue our league play form, at least, to secure that top 4 so we can improve over the summer and hopefully use that time for these guys to figure it out, for these things to snap. Because if my prediction or my hope for this team is that next year we're fighting for the Scudetto, we're not going to do it if we have this version of Coop Miners and this version of Nico Gonzalez.
And the thing that makes me wonder, because I'm worst case scenario, what if A, that doesn't happen, and B, other players follow that path as well? Because that's my biggest concern. I always hear these terms of like we're building and we're learning and we're growing, and like the press conferences of Mota are basically a copy paste every time. But what if the worst case, these players keep degrading and other players are degrading as well?
I don't know. I'm not too concerned about that right now, because just to give you some examples, I mean, Thuram, every time he plays, today included, he's just, at least in my opinion, so fun to watch. I don't know why he was sat for 3 straight games, or 4 straight games or whatever until he started today. Timmy Weah as a right back has been kind of a revelation, hasn't he? So it's like showing his progression. McKennie's deficiencies in the 10, at least with his touch, was kind of on display today. But I think when we go away from the Kolo and Vlahovic together situation, I want to talk Dusan in a second. I think you're going to see kind of the utility and the way we build and play around him, or at least the last few games, to come back again, and that'll be fine. Gotti's his health, and he stepped up. I think there's a lot of players like this where Locatelli, where they've either reinvented themselves or we've seen them truly shine. So I don't necessarily see a systemic problem in the players from that standpoint. The only systemic problem I see is more so in the collective effort and drive, and or starting with the collective effort and drive to dominate games.
Mota agrees with you, by the way. It's his,
that's good to hear.
It's his first mea culpa of the season. I'm going to quote him. I feel ashamed of the attitude in the first half. I'm wrong because I did not make the players understand the importance of the match and of wearing an important shirt like that of Juventus. I hope that the criticism is really strong. The fans were too kind for us. You have to run and always commit, even in training. It's not a technical or tactical problem at Juventus, but the attitude. There are some players who demand without giving. With a different attitude now, we'll have to start again.
I think that's he must listen to the podcast, Frederick. He must listen to us. I think he's been taking notes. He's been listening to our breakdown.
Of course
yeah.
he does.
Oh, absolutely. Because we've been saying that for months, haven't we? I think, you and I have said it. Kevin said it. Everyone who's been on the podcast has said it. It's very clear. I think him calling it out, I don't really like press conferences, but it just kind of gives you the warm and fuzzies. It's like, duh, dude, we've all seen this for a long time. It was just most painfully obvious today. And I think maybe this was the first time where he's kind of sent a little message to his players via a press conference. We know other coaches do it frequently, your Contes and Mourinho's of the world, but I think this is also him saying, like, to his team as well, that I'm not going to cover me, and I'm not going to cover you in the press. There's no covering what just giant pile of steaming crap we left on the pitch today.
Which is also makes me wonder, is Mota a bit nervous at this point? Because he was always pretty bland in his, like we said, in his conferences, which doesn't reflect on what he does behind closed doors, which I can imagine. But the fact that he comes out now, and pretty strong words, I think we can agree on. Do you think that means that he's feeling that, the water's beginning to get to his lips as well?
We talked about this also after post PSV, and sorry guys, if you've been watching this on video, the little guy he's been screaming and whining and upset, and
he's one of us. He's one of us.
He's a baby. So I've had to stay
could be worse. We could
have
had Farad on the show. So
yeah, it's true. It's true.
Oh man, no, but my amazing wife got home, so I can kind of rejoin here for a moment. We talked in the post PSV match. And I think we kind of said it tongue in cheek. Does Mota know what he's doing? Because he just seems lost, and there's mistakes to be learned from. There have been matches where there's the obvious change, where what the team is doing, how it needs to evolve tactically in a particular situation. And it really, and we acknowledge that we can't always have all the information available to us and why certain decisions are made and why a certain approach is taken or why a certain player remains on the pitch or doesn't enter. I am just very concerned that the burden of being the Juventus coach and the amount of money that has been spent on the squad at his disposal and the pressure that he is feeling, that he just seems a bit frozen. The press, I know, Zach, you don't put much weight into press conferences, and I respect that, right? But it's robotic. It's the same lines. It's these continual opportunities where a certain mentality and certain effort is required and unable to rise to the moment.
But I'll ask you, I know you were taking care of baby, but I'll ask you the same question I asked Freddie is, how do you reconcile that with 5 wins on the bounce in the league? Is it where his immaturity as a coach just isn't able to properly prioritize and articulate the objective in cup games? Because it's so strange that you win 5 in a row in the league, and then you play that second game at PSV and you play at home against Empoli the way we did. Like, do you think that's it, or do you think it's just across the board and maybe we were lucky to win those games in the league?
I don't think it's lucky that we won 5 in a row. I think we have good enough players where we can win those matches despite the value a tactician and coach brings to the squad. And we're in 4th place for a reason, right? Like, we've won and drawn more games than we've lost, and we've certainly drawn our fair share. There's no question about that. But Malta I don't think has elevated this group and this collection of players to be better than the sum of their parts, which is what a good tactician does. Look at Napoli. This team is objectively worse than where they were last year. Without Kvara, without Osimhen, they are 40 points higher up the table than where they were at this point in the season. That's the value of a coach who gets more out of their players. That is what Conte has brought to that team. We can criticize him for how he performs in cups, how he performs in Europe, but what he brings to a team, that is what you want to see in a manager. And I know Motta's early in his career. This is the first big team he's coached, but he has played for big teams. Like, he's represented, unfortunately, Inter. He's represented PSG. He's played at Barcelona. He knows what it means to be in these matches. I don't see it translating to when it matters. The Inter match was a great match to win. Don't get me wrong. I thoroughly enjoyed that. If Lautaro had his shooting boots on, we'd be talking a different outcome in that game. But there's been too many opportunities and too many draws where we don't have the answers. We don't adjust. We repeat the same mistakes. And when it comes down to a moment where the mentality, the effort, the execution is paramount, i.e. in cup ties, we come up lacking. Yeah. And that, I think, is where a manager and coach, their value is assessed. And I know we don't have a lot of confidence in the whole Juve board and management system right now. But if I'm on that group, I'm seriously considering if we have our guy. And I don't want to jump on a hashtag Malta out train. Like, I think that's counterproductive. I was never truly an Allegri out guy. Even we were going through that because I truly believe that what we were experiencing was more than just the coach. And I think we're finding that to be true here as well. But I've seen enough through, what are we talking about here? 5 or 6 months that I have my doubts at this point. And Frederic, I know you had your concerns coming into the season, and I was definitely more on the optimistic side. Have faith, hold on to the trust in the process. We've seen enough bright spots where this can continue. Zach, I think you and I were very much aligned. Mm-hmm. I'm losing some of that now.
This is the you can explain away, I think, a lot of the other scars of our season. There's absolutely no explaining away this. Like, it is just so obviously, I mean, you can't run away. It's just what it is. You lose at home to an injury-ravaged, out-of-form Empoli team in the quarterfinals of the Coppa. There's no running from that. And you know, Mota said he defended nobody. It's because you can't. There's nothing you can say or do that can that will make this performance and this result any better. And so I think your wavering, or your doubt or your concern is well founded when a team puts up such a poor performance and gets a poor result in a game such as today that should have been a cakewalk.
There's also, sorry, just got a text in, a crisis meeting imminent with the board, Falcon and Giuntoli.
Well, there you go. I think
So
this is it's very visible. It's embarrassing. I think that's the first thing I texted her. I'm embarrassed. I wasn't even there. I'm embarrassed.
Well, Malta was too. So I'm looking at his post game comments, and finally we have a reaction from him.
Freddie read us some of them a little bit earlier.
We are left with shame.
Yeah.
I feel honestly shame for what we saw in the first half, and I hope my players feel the same way.
It's just,
so you read that while I was bouncing around with the baby and couldn't hear you guys.
But I also feel that's a bit of an easy way out as well, because he's basically dumping all the responsibility on the players, whether right or wrong. We'll leave that in the middle, because I think 80% of the responsibility does land on the players, their shoulders. But if you as a coach put Nico, who's been out of form, on the left, you put, Kolo Muani on the right, and you leave Yildiz on the bench along with Mbangula, and you let Vlahovic play up front, I have my doubts. I'm coming back to that starting formation, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist as a coach to just put your best players in their best position, and sometimes
he
it works.
tries a new formation for the first time this season in a knockout game with players who haven't played together in this way. This was the first true 4-3-3 that we've seen this year, like in a traditional sense from the get-go. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the first time we've seen it that way with the true midfield three.
I think he experimented like halfway through a game or something, but the fact that you put Muani on the right, to me, is baffling, because you see what he can bring to the table as a striker, as a center striker. But you decide to put him on the right. Well, you have options enough. You could start with Chico. You even could start with Kenan on the right and make him switch halfway in the game, position-wise. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, because tactically you're the mastermind here.
Yeah, no, it would be Yildiz on the. I mean, if you start Nico
Yildiz
as well, put Yildiz on the left, Nico on the right.
Yeah, but I mean, you have a plethora of options that you can use prior to commencing that game, and you choose the most.
Oh, Freddie's system. He's just was as depressed as he is. I think a lot of people were curious to see Kolo and Dusan play together, and I think if that is the method and the tactics by which they play together, that's not the solution. Right. Oh, he's back.
I'm sorry, my internet decided to go tits up. My apologies.
I just, we saw you disappear, so all I said, Freddie, was that I think if this is the vision for Dusan and Kolo playing together, long may it never be seen again. Can we talk Dusan for a minute, because
please do.
The last game, he came out like a man possessed, and for 60 minutes he was the best player on the pitch. He showed a renewed vigor. He showed an improved touch. His passing was good. He scored the goal from a physical solo effort that we just haven't seen in forever. And he responds with a just what I would describe as empty performance, punctuated by, how do you want to describe the penalty? Atrocious. I mean, granted, he hasn't missed one this year that he's taken. This is his first missed penalty, but it just started us off so poorly, so terribly. Is this penalty kind of the summation or the bookend to his tenure at Juventus at this point?
I feel his end at Juventus has been being foretold for a couple of months now. But given the fact that he puts in these types of performances is negative to him, to us, for the result that we achieve, but also for the future. Because let's be honest, if we have a Vlahovic coming in, scoring left and right, he can help the team improve point-wise, A. But B, his value basically goes up. Now we're left with an unsatisfied player who's very emotional, to say the least, who has still a lot of residual balance left on his contract, and who needs to feel as the VIP of the squad in order to perform, or he needs to be stimulated as such. And Mota doesn't do that.
Well, I wouldn't do it. Nothing about his play would warrant it, Fred. I mean,
No, I think that's what Mota also says in his post-match. Like, he says there's some players that are demanding, but don't give anything back. I think that's a slight jab at Vlahovic, earning 12 million now and not being able to score a tap-in because he got 2 chances in the second half. I mean, the way he handled those, my greatly departed grandmother, who was at her best time in a wheelchair, would have done better. And you have the arrogance to ask for 12 million a year.
But the performance today, in contrast to what we experienced against Calgary over the weekend, I don't think should surprise any of us, any of the three of us, and anybody listening.
Mm-hmm.
The story of Vlahovic's career at Juventus has been one of just inconsistency. He's capable of brilliant moments and having really good games. The Vlahovic we saw in the Coppa Italia final against Atalanta at the Olimpico at the end of last season, that's the Vlahovic we want to see every single weekend. But we're lucky to get it every third or fourth match. And if you are going to warrant and demand and command the amount of money he's getting paid, you have to have the consistency of a Harry Kane, a Robert Lewandowski, an Erling Haaland, a Mohamed Salah at that level. You do. You need to have that level of consistency. And he is consistently inconsistent, at least since donning the black and white kit. He had obviously he had some really great seasons with La Viola, but how many players have we taken from them that when they make the step up to our squad, we've been talking about another one of those throughout a lot of this pod in Nico Gonzalez. But he is, if we had purchased him for 25, 30 million and he was on a third of the wages he had, I think it might be okay. Fair value for money.
My concern.
Where he is,
sorry,
it's not. It's just, yeah. I'll just end up repeating myself. Go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is that it's clear his play does not warrant his salary from us or from anybody. And if he's looking at the summer at offers from even premier clubs for a third or half the value, if I'm his agent, I'm probably telling him, even if you don't play, stay, collect that fat check. Hopefully we get a bidding war over the following summer because you'll be on a free, you'll have inflated wages, we'll make some cool Instagram reels and people will be hyped up about your potential and we'll cry in the papers about not getting game time at Juventus. Because he's never going to get this paycheck again unless his play warrants it, and it's not. And so I'm afraid we might be saddled either with just trying to get rid of him for any fee, or his wages will be on our books another year because it won't behoove him to leave to whomever is willing to pay us whatever, because the wages they offer him won't be commensurate of what he's getting now. I mean, we just totally screwed ourselves with this contract, and it makes me terrified about our potential to offload him over the summer.
And this is what I've been referencing to in other podcasts.
I don't know if I'm laughing or crying.
Yeah, it was spot on, the soundbite, but this was basically what I've been saying for a few podcasts now. The lack of management is something that's being portrayed on the field as well now, because we were stupid enough as a management team to grant him this salary, and we get served the consequences now. And it's as
Who
simple as
did that? Who did that, Freddie?
I think it was Paratici. I'm pretty sure it was Paratici.
That was when Agnelli was still here, though, right?
No, I don't think so. I think it was his final year, right in the midst of the whole scandal in what was it, 2024?
No, it was before that.
2023?
He came in winter of 22, winter of 21.
Yeah.
He came before. He came before. I mean, just we don't have to go too much into ownership because I know Kevin's been trying to give us these Instagram questions, and we've been just, I don't know, crying in all of our tears of the commiserations of this horrible performance. But keep in mind that the former ownership structure that gave him that contract was the Agnelli management. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's Agnelli management and people clamoring to get him back. It needs to recognize the mistakes as well as the successes, because this is a disaster.
This is a clusterfuck of a disaster. This is an atomic bomb of a disaster. This is of earth-shattering capabilities type of disaster. This is something that you can make a Hollywood show about, like, and this is unbelievable. This is, I mean, I think some people in a management position on a night that they are full of cocaine and whiskey wouldn't even grant him this contract. I'm not sure what happened there or what the leverage was, but this is, I mean, he earns equally as much as Haaland with that 12 mil.
Well, and then it gets even higher in the final contract year.
Yeah, it's been rising. I think every year or so.
He also gets, if I'm not mistaken, in his contract, there's a clause that he gets, what was it? 350K per goal in Serie A. The same in the...
No, luckily we haven't had to pay that too much.
Nobody gets paid over 800K per goal in the Champions League. And if I'm not mistaken, he scored 5 this season, but we're still eliminated.
Money well spent.
We played over
let's
4 million
transition to
for
those
goals without any
Instagram
use.
questions. I wanted to ask them earlier, but my iPhone decided to do a software update, so we have them now. The questions are very much aligned to what we've been talking about. So Evan B, hey Evan, asks, would we still be in the Champions League and would we still be in the Coppa Italia if we got rid of Malta months ago? Malta Coupa Nico, please leave. You don't ever deserve to wear this kit. So kind of an opinion / question, but I don't know, hindsight's 2020. But if we had pulled the trigger earlier, I personally, and I want to get your take too. I think exiting from the Malta relationship months ago would have been wildly premature. There wasn't enough evidence or experience or history getting into the part of the season that matters to have warranted that kind of move. We're not Roma.
No, but it's also a product of who's available, right? I agree with you, and I'm sticking to my stance. December 31st, 2025. That's my Mota time. That's my Mota deadline. But you also need to have a replacement. And even if you have a good quote unquote, candidate to replace him, it then always seems to go one of two ways, right? You see this super big boost, like the Solskjaer when he took over at Man United and they went on this run, just this unbelievable run of winning games in the EPL. Before coming back down to earth eventually. Or you get kind of what Milan's seeing with Conceição. More of the same, right? Yeah, they won the Super Cup, but they've just been wildly inconsistent as well in the league and through their play in the Champions League as well. So
I think they've been consistently mediocre, but
I mean, it's the point remains, right? Is that they didn't get any better. They have not gotten any better. And so it's oftentimes, I think it's human nature where you say, well, the other side must be greener than this. But that is
Yep.
absolutely not true. And I think, and Frederick has said several times, and he'll correct me if he didn't say this several times, but my memory says he said several times that there really were no alternative candidates. Who would you get? And so even if you could get that person, they would then have to get the players to understand what he wants them to do. And that's a coin toss of whether it's going to be the Solskjaer situation or whether it's going to be the Conceição situation.
I can agree with you guys more, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I still feel everything flows down from management, and our management structurally is a mess. And if we don't get that sorted right away, we can get Klopp or whoever. It still doesn't or it won't change anything because you need that vision, you need that structure, you need somebody who's in charge with a well-defined area within the club, who sets out the lines, and the other people follow them. You cannot, as much as I love to criticize Juntuli and Mota, they're basically a product of our management at this point, because Juntuli was chosen by Alcon autonomously, and Juntuli at his point picked Mota. So in my opinion, they're all equally responsible for the clusterfuck that we're experiencing at this point. But there's also a bit of a nuance to it, because Juntuli gets handed the keys to the sporting sector of Juventus as a whole, but he's a sporting director, but there's no general director. We have a president who knows nothing about Juventus, who knows nothing about football as a whole. So how can you expect that to work simultaneously, gel, and churn out results that we have grown accustomed to as Juventus fans? For all his mistakes and all the things that he did wrong, the thing that Agnelli offered was that structure. And Agnelli was the first, in my opinion, person within the club to get behind the camera when things went rough. He was the first person to defend Allegri at the time. He was the person to appear in front of the camera when we got knocked out against Ajax, I think. I'm not sure, but if memory serves me right, it was that game. We don't have that. We're in management limbo at this point. So if we don't change that, we can stop about talking about other players, other coaches. There are a lot of things wrong, but it needs to trickle down from top to bottom. And the day that somebody at La Continassa gets that in a stick hat, that's the time that we hopefully get to resurrect as a squad.
I want to pause on the Juntuli comment for a moment. We haven't talked too much about him at length on our pods, and I realize we're approaching the hour mark here, so maybe this is one of kind of the final things we talk about. There was a lot of excitement when he arrived, and all of the Juntuli is cooking and Juntuli sta cucinando, and just like with all these moves, and you saw on Instagram over the summer, it's Douglas Luiz, Koop Miners, and Turin, like the midfield of the season. Like there was so much hype around this, and I look about coming into this season when there was a clear vision in terms of Juventus is going to embrace more of the modern style of play. We want more attractive, electric, like dare I say, like more champagne football, where we're more proactive in the approach and having more possession-based, high-energy game in contrast to what we saw in the Allegri season. So with that in mind, and we want to bring the age of the club down. You leverage next gen. You use that to source investment. Some of the cream rises to the top and they break into the first team. And you bring in players that can fuel this mentality and approach and desire to go start winning again. You bring in the most dynamic midfielder from the previous season. You bring in a player in Koop Miners. you bring in a player whose father played for the team and knows what it means to play for Juve in Turin. You bring in Douglas Luiz, who is a dynamic kind of flair player for a surging Aston Villa side who looked really good last year and who hadn't experienced any injuries really in his career until landing in Continassa with Juve. You get a few kind of fringe budget players like a Kalulu that you hope can break in and play. You make investments in Conceição and Nico, who started off well. And then you bring in a coach who had proven to have potential at a Spezia, at Bologna, who embodied this. On paper, this looked pretty damn good. And we saw some games at the beginning of the season that this looks great. I don't know if many of us were challenging the decisions that were made in the moment. I think a lot of us were excited about it. And it's really easy for us, with the benefit of hindsight and what we've seen materialize on the pitch, to criticize the decisions and spending that kind of money on those players. If we were standing here and Coop had 8 or 9 goals and another 8 or 9 assists so far, we'd say this was amazing and money well spent.
Yeah.
Is this just shit luck? And it's just sometimes stuff doesn't work out, because it looked like it was planned pretty well as we entered the season, and it's just not materializing.
He doesn't know how to use the players, in my opinion. He was very adamant about adding Koopmeiners to the team, which still shows, because I think if Koop gets a chance to go home with Mota will happily drive him, meet the wife and whatever. So he has a certain affection for Koop as the type of player he wants. But for some reason, Koop is not delivering. Same goes for Douglas Luiz. I'm pretty sure that Douglas Luiz wasn't a choice of Mota, but was sort of a bargaining chip in that deal we made with Barrenechea and who's the other guy?
Illing Jr.
Illing Jr., yeah. I'm not sure what went on there. It's a bit of an inexplicable transfer, but on paper, everything looked great. But you have to question, I mean, is it shit luck? If 3 of your best signings don't even deliver half of what they did in the past few seasons, I don't think you can attribute that to just bad luck, to be honest.
The only thing we can attribute to bad luck, and you J medical conspiracy theorists will disagree with me, but I think the only thing you can really attribute to bad luck is the injuries. Certainly,
not all of them.
No, certainly game volume plays a role in it and stuff like that. But like Bremer's injury seemed innocuous, right? Kalulu's injury at first, like these weren't like these. I mean, like when Bremer's happened and Cabal's happened, it wasn't like some crazy thing. It just they tweaked it landing or stepping weird. Like that's unlucky. When it comes to play on the field, okay, I don't believe in luck. You have to prepare the team in a certain way and convey your message, and the players have to then execute. I agree, Kevin, that we were all really excited about our midfield, but I wouldn't agree that it was all gravy. Clearly didn't have a right back. We clearly didn't have any depth at striker, something we've talked about. It's just so strange, I mean, other than the Dusan question, that we've had so many issues with our midfield, when that was the one area all of us said at least will be good there, if not the best midfield in Serie A. Because on paper, that's exactly what it seemed to be, especially when you throw in the fact that Locatelli's playing out of his mind. Right?
It was also a priority. You could clearly see that the priority for management was to reinforce the midfield.
Well, we haven't had a great midfield the last couple seasons, and in order to drive the possession-based game, that's where you invest to control. Like I think that plan made sense. It
made perfect sense. Now I didn't want to go as far as you did as like the team on paper, because there were definitely still holes. I just want to focus on the midfield, because that was where the significant investment was, and that's where we were unequivocally supposed to be the best. And at times our midfields looked really good, but it's been with midfields with like McKennie and Locatelli. It's because, and this is both on Mota, but also the players are not rising to the occasion and from the player standpoint, and from Mota is not getting the best out of his players. That is a joint failure that Douglas Luiz and Coop Miners look like not even a reflection or a shadow of their former self. They look like completely different players. I mean, Kevin, we talked about it earlier on this podcast. The goal contributions that Nico Gonzalez and Coop Miners brought to their respective teams last year were astronomically higher than what we're seeing on the pitch. And that's not just from a number standpoint. It's from at least Coop's case, a eye test. I mean, you look at him and he so clearly looks lost at times, or just is being sort of a bit player, role player, when we need him to be the man. And so to go to your question, I agree with you as it comes to the midfield that, but I'm not criticizing, at least my criticisms of Juntali has nothing to do with our midfield acquisitions. It has to do with the fact that we had the right back and Dusan question still left unanswered. But from my Mota situation, it's absolutely comes down to getting the best out of his players. I disagree with statements saying that players aren't improving, but the right players are not executing the way we need them to on a consistent basis. And that definitely is in part on the coach. There's no question.
So I want to make sure that we don't overlook the final question we have from Instagram. We've talked about this, but I still want to thank. I imagine you're going by the Italian pronunciation of your name, so this must be Carmine Silveroli instead of Carmine. But Carmine, thank you for the question. What do you think Nico actually brings to Juventus match after match? I feel disappointed with him. Poor dribbles after poor dribbles. I guess he has a good work rate. I mean, that sums it up pretty well. I don't know how much more else there is to add.
So because I like him and I've gone on record and I've said that 3 or 4 times this podcast, I'll just kind of respond to that. Nico Gonzalez makes really good inside runs when he plays on the wing, and he does absolutely objectively have the technical ability to play as not only a link between the midfield and the attack, but also to score goals. He was the leading scorer and I believe the leading assister on Fiorentina last year. I mean, his goal scoring record and his contributions with the ball at his feet and in the air are objective. You could go back and you can look at the stats, the numbers. And when you look at his play, it also is demonstrative of a player who has a high football IQ. But this year, his finishing touch has let him down. And in the last 2 games, his overall touch has let him down. And I think it goes back to what we said about Coop. This is a player, even more so than Coop, that's shown that he knows what he wants to do. And I can see what he wants to do. And what he wants to do is good. But he has failed to produce when we need him to. And our team is, I mean, not to put it all on him, but we've paid the price in those situations.
I think for Nico as a whole, sorry to interrupt, but with the other players that we mentioned, be it Douglas Luiz, be it Coop Miners, I think there's a certain thing that goes wrong within the team mechanics, which explains as to why they are not performing as they should. And I feel it's up to the coach to up those team mechanics or instill them within a team to make sure that at least the dominating players must render at the utmost of their capabilities. And this is what we're not seeing. And I think this is the core of our issues on the pitch right now. The dynamics between the players and the way that we play or we feel that we need to play is not something that corresponds with their technical abilities or the way that they can find each other on the pitch, so to speak. And I think this is a glaring issue. Will that be fixed when we fire Mota? Of course not. It all depends on who the successor is. But I think at this point, at the end of the season, I think management needs to sit down as a whole and say, okay, where did it go wrong? Who's responsible? And most importantly, how can we remedy this?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to continue with Mota, I'm fine. I'll support Mota. I'll support Juventus till the day I die. But at least come out in front of the cameras and tell us what the vision is and what went wrong and how you as a team, management wise, technical wise, have learned from this and will improve during the next tenure.
But we don't even have until the end of the season to have that reconciliation and reflection. It has to be at least a meaningful portion of that has to be figured out by Monday when we come up against Hellas Verona. The rest of the season starts on Monday, because we talked about on this podcast how critical the month of February has proven to be. We've made up ground in Serie A, and we find ourselves firmly in fourth place. No other teams with games in hand or goal differential breaking. Like, we are in fourth. We made ground. Other teams have slipped up. The gap between where we are in first place, I don't want to say it is still very much, I think, out of reach, but it wasn't as far as it was at the beginning of February. But we've crashed out of the Champions League. We've crashed out of the Coppa Italia. There are no excuses. The only objective that remains now at this point is securing top four. And if that does not happen, the season is a total disaster beyond just being not a great season so far. So it has to be figured out. And there's no excuses for how we have to enter the pitch on Monday.
I've
Agreed.
also had a chance to read Motta's statements in Italian, because we read a portion of the translated bits. And to anybody who masters the Italian language, I highly recommend that you read it, because it hits a lot harder and a lot different than it does in English. And if you don't pull it out of context and read the whole post-match interview, he really dropped an A-bomb. So I'm curious to see how that will fold out, given that there will be a crisis meeting imminent soon. But pretty harsh words, and also a very mea culpa from him, because at the end he says, "This is all my responsibility, because I'm not capable of letting these players know the importance of playing in a team with the importance that Juventus has, and to win games that people with the shirt of Juventus on have to win. This is on me."
So
I think there's no better place to leave our commiseration and therapy session podcast than on those words.
was just going to say the same thing. So I thank you, Frederic, for bringing that up.
Welcome.
Any closing words, guys? I think we've left it all out there.
I hope our next exactly. If you know alla fine, it's at this point it's the season, and so hopefully our conversation after Verona is going to be materially different.
Yeah, always nice to spend time with you guys. Hopefully we have something more fun and energizing to talk about in the coming days and weeks. But please, again, we appreciate the follows on our socials. Check us out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, 5-star ratings mean the world to us. And it was another tough one, but as always, fino alla fine, forza Juve.
I was caught in the middle.